Right, where are we next? This whole next section is to do with Trump. And before we get into the fun and games. But the report came out this week that the Trump administration has not spent $9 billion in funding for the COVID-19 testing because of the opposition from a person known as Scott Atlas, who is an advisor on the White House coronavirus task force. And they proclaimed that Atlas is not an infectious disease expert. I thought he was a MacBook, but never mind. And has emerged as an influential and controversial, advisor on the task force by promoting ideas in line with Trump's approach to the pandemic. And we're demanding that the Fed releases these dollars, according to Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, who said that on Sunday, urging the Trump administration to commit to a robust testing and tracing program. But perhaps they can test and trace whether they've got any brain cells first. That would be a useful way to spend that $9 billion, in my opinion. But those are all mainstream media statements. But let's fact check it, shall we? Atlas is not an infectious disease expert. Now, Mr. Atlas is an American neuroradiologist, professor, commentator, and healthcare policy advisor. He is a senior fellow at the Hoover Institution, and he's also written 4 books on healthcare policy, reforming America's healthcare system. But that is declared as a non-expert. And then we have Bill Gates, business magnate, software developer, and philanthropist. Mentions of medical expert? None. He is a computer tech wizard who can't cure viruses on his own computer system, and yet he is highly regarded and mentoring as a medical expert, infectious disease or otherwise. Well, testing the public has cost lots of money. That's made snake oil people like Kushner lots of money also. And yet these tests have been found to reveal 90% are false positives. We the people find this type of information is not only bullshit, but it is also misleading the public and goes against our community standards. This next piece was part of a broadcast in the past week and a follow-up news piece where it says, by now you have probably heard of QAnon, a broad, baffling conspiracy theory that centers on the idea that there exists an international cult reaching the world of celebrity and politics that engages in child sex trafficking. Really? What about Epstein? Oh, let's forget about that. He committed suicide by flying to live in Israel. There you go. It roams widely, they said, at times looping in theories about John F. Kennedy Jr., whose supporters allege is still alive, or celebrities need to consume a chemical extracted from human blood. Actually, it's from the glands. All of this orbits around a mysterious figure identified as Q, who releases cryptic notes from which adherents extract their own life-sustaining meaning. It's a lot, so much that you're probably familiar with it in only a fairly broad sense. But again, you're probably familiar with it to some extent and probably have an opinion on the extent to which the most powerful person in the United States should entertain it as legitimate. So you can see where they're going. If your opinion is that President Trump should break with his past practice and condemn the theory as both ludicrous and dangerous, a position held by the FBI, we have some bad news. And during a sharp exchange with NBC's News' Savannah Guthrie during a town hall event on Thursday, Trump was peppered with a number of his more inscrutable and contentious claims. One was his refusal to advocate for wearing masks to combat the coronavirus pandemic, which led him to make false claims about the purported risks of wearing one. He was again pressed to reject white supremacy, prompting him to pivot or try to pivot to complaints about left-wing activists like Antifa, who are a loose-knit group that has at times engaged in violence. Pro-pagan Dar at its finest. Why are they holding up the FBI as the bastions of truth when clearly the same group were found wanting on the Russian collusion, the Hillary emails, and many other discrepancies in their work? False claims of purported risks of wearing a mask. Yet why is there a warning on the side of the masks box that states, "This product is an ear loop mask. This product is not a respirator and will not provide any protection against COVID-19 or other viruses or contaminants." Oops. Wearing a loop mask does not reduce the risk of contracting any disease or infection. So why haven't they banned the manufacturer for misleading information then? Yes, I know. Common sense again. It's an epidemic. In this show, anyway. And so there you have it. The manufacturer of the masks tells you they don't work against viruses or infections. Antifa, they describe them as a loose-knit group that has at times engaged in violence. Yes, like burning whole towns, shopping centres, and up and down the northwest coast of America. These people are not only stupid, but certifiable. But this is the exchange between Guthrie and Trump, which I thought would be useful because it says a lot. Guthrie said, "Let me ask you about QAnon. It is this theory that Democrats are a satanic pedophile. It's not a theory. And that you are the saviour of that. Now, can you just once and for all state that that is completely not true and disavow QAnon in its entirety?" Trump, "I know nothing about QAnon." Oops. Guthrie, "I just told you." Trump, "You told me, but what you tell me doesn't necessarily make it fact. I hate to say that. I know nothing about it," he said. "I do know they are very much against pedophilia. They fight it hard, but I know nothing about it. If you'd like me to," and he was interrupted. And Guthrie said, "They believe it is a satanic cult run by the deep state." Trump, "Study the subject. I tell you what I do know about. I know about Antifa, and I know about the radical left, and I know how violent they are and how vicious they are, and I know that they're burning down cities run by Democrats, not run by Republicans." And the report goes on that 5 years into Trump's political career, it's rare to find any of his comments terribly shocking. This response, the reporter said, is shocking. Trump expresses ignorance about the bounds of the QAnon theory, that the President of the United States should have said that he's unfamiliar with a bizarre theory that has tens or hundreds of thousands of adherents, that has been described as dangerous by federal law enforcement. Of course it is, because they're involved in the cover-up is why. And that centres on his administration suggests either that he is stunningly uninformed or simply not telling the truth. And Guthrie's summary of the theory is fair and common. It's impossible to think Trump's never been presented with it before. That he then isolates a central tenet, that the group is fighting pedophilia, suggests that he is quite familiar with it. QAnon followers try to leverage legitimate efforts to combat human trafficking to increase the reach of their theory. They are mucking up sincere efforts centered on the issue to introduce wild accusations and increase their exposure. QAnon fights pedophilia in the same sense that an Instagram influencer pretending to help clean up after protests is fighting for social justice. But as with the white supremacy question, Trump doesn't want to alienate people who support him, which QAnon adherents broadly do. His campaign has tried to walk a line between welcoming QAnon adherents and still maintaining some distance, not entirely successful. So once again he says something nice about them, as he did in August. Now the exchange continued. Guthrie said, Republican Senator Ben Sasse said QAnon is nuts and real leaders call conspiracy theories conspiracy theories. Trump, he may be right. Guthrie, why not say it's crazy and not true? Trump, he may be right. I just don't know about QAnon. Guthrie replied, but you do know. Trump said, I don't know. No, I don't know. I don't know. 3 times. Now Guthrie tried to move on, and Trump, angry, insisted they not. So Guthrie said, let me ask you another thing. Trump says, let's waste a whole show. You start off with white supremacy, I denounce it. You start off with something else, let's go. Keep asking me these questions. So she said, okay, I have one more in this vein. And then Trump said, let me just tell you what I do hear about it, is they are very strongly against pedophilia, and I agree with that. I mean, I do agree with that, and I agree with it very strongly. And then Guthrie says, but there's not a satanic pedophile cult being run by Trump. I have no idea. I know nothing about it. And Guthrie carried on, you don't know that? No, I don't know that, and neither do you know that. So what they were saying was that the President of the United States asked if there was a satanic pedophile cult with roots in the US government, says he has no idea. Further, that a journalist for a major news network can't honestly claim to know whether this idea is legitimate. And Guthrie asked Trump about his retweet this week of a conspiracy theory that Biden orchestrated the killing of SEAL Team 6 to cover up the fake death of Osama bin Laden. Why would you send a lie like that to your followers? Guthrie asked him. Trump repeated again, I know nothing about it, but you retweeted it. Mr. Trump also couldn't answer whether he was tested on the day of the last debate, shortly before he tested positive for COVID-19. And the report says Mr. Trump, who claims to have one of the best memories, said he didn't know and couldn't remember. That was not a good exchange by Mr. Trump. Just not. So having bombed in his debate with the senile Biden, Trump now fails spectacularly in this pre-election broadcast. And the question is, are we seeing a pattern here? Not only did he come across badly, but he also deleted from the records his main voting group, the QAnons. Our message to QAnons: come and join us. You will learn a whole lot more than cryptic messages. Booms in information will be real, and we will not seduce you with fake dates or promises that come and go faster than the Trump cabinet members. The question is he stepping aside or down? Perhaps the next piece reveals more. For nearly 4 years, congressional Republicans have ducked and dodged an unending cascade of offensive statements and norm-shattering behaviour from President Trump, ignoring his caustic and scattershot Twitter feed and penchant for flouting party orthodoxy, and standing quietly by as he abandoned military allies, attacked American institutions, and stirred up racist and nativist fears. And the shift less than 3 weeks before the election indicates that now that many Republicans have concluded that Mr. Trump is heading for a loss in November. Senator Ben Sasse of Nebraska unleashed on Trump in a telephone town hall event with constituents on Wednesday, eviscerating the president's response to the coronavirus pandemic and accusing him of flirting with dictators and white supremacists and alienating voters so broadly that he might cause a Republican bloodbath in the Senate. Now, he was echoing a phrase from Senator Ted Cruz of Texas, who warned of a Republican bloodbath or of Watergate proportions. Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina, one of the president's most vocal allies, predicted the president could very well lose the White House. Even the normally taciturn Senator Mitch McConnell, Republican of Kentucky and the majority leader, has been more outspoken than usual in recent days about his differences with the president and rejecting his calls to go big on a stimulus bill. In the backdrop to all of this, there was a regulatory rush this past few weeks by federal agencies to secure Trump's legacy, it said. Facing the prospect that President Trump could lose his re-election bid, his cabinet is scrambling to enact regulatory changes affecting millions of Americans in a blitz so rushed it may leave some changes vulnerable to court challenges. The effort is evident in a broad range of federal agencies and encompasses proposals like easing limits on how many hours some truckers can spend behind the wheel, giving the government more freedom to collect biometric data, and setting federal standards for when workers can be classified as independent contractors rather than employees. Interesting term, that. Still think Trump's going to win? Does he want to win? Is the key question, given his recent performances.